Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back. Just going to invite you all to take your seats. We're going to get started with our afternoon program here. Thank you. I hope you all enjoyed that trade show networking break. I hope you all had an opportunity to connect. We're going to jump right into our afternoon program. As a quick reminder, audience members can submit questions for our speakers through Slido. There are QR codes in your programs, and they will come up on the screen as well. We're going to move right into our next panel of the day, entitled Energy Pathways Led by Indigenous Voices, which will explore how Indigenous leadership is shaping the future of energy development. I'm pleased to welcome our moderator, Jeremy Thompson, the president of Eagle Spirit Business Development, and his panelists to the stage. Let's give them all a very warm IROC welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you to our elders who are in attendance and our leadership. I know that we have a number of chiefs and council members in attendance today, so thank you for joining us today. This panel is called Energy Pathways Led by Indigenous Voices, and I want to start by naming why that framing matters. For a long time, major energy projects in this country were planned first and discussed with Indigenous nations second, if at all. What we're here to talk about today is a different model. One where the relationship with a nation isn't a box to check, but something that shapes how a project gets built, what it's accountable to, and who it answers to over the long term. Much of our conversation will center on Woodfibre LNG and its relationship with the Squamish Nation, including the Squamish Nation Environmental Assessment, which was notable as one of the first times a nation conducted its own independent assessment of an industrial project and set binding conditions on a proponent had to meet. We'll also look at how the approach extends down the supply chain, including FortisBC's work to deliver gas to the facility. Today I'm joined by four people who can speak to this from very different vantage points. From our far end, we have Nolan Rudkowsky, Selena, Basi, Blake Mansbridge, and Seraphine Lewis, and I'm going to turn it over to Seraphine now. So.
Thank you. Hotsquad Tanoyap, Seraphine Lewis, Queensna, Tana, Chentla, Chiakamish, Ochomeos, Kahotmish, Oath, Haida Oath, Awanax and Squalowin, Aoth and Sequitos, Hoichikas, Nanemoch, Ochomeo, and Aoth and Sequitos. I just spoke in the Skahotmish Snachum, the Squamish language. I said, good day, my English name is Seraphine. My ancestral name is Kuyagewans. It means precious one. I am very precious. It's a Haida name from my Haida family up in the north, but I'm also a proud Skahotmish, Slanai, a Squamish woman. I grew up in Squamish Valley, and what else I said was, it feels good in my heart to be with you today. This is my first panel. So I get to do a lot of cool public speaking lately, so thank you for giving me this opportunity. And I also wanted to thank the Snuneymuxw Ochmeo, the Snuneymuxw people for hosting us today. Snuneymuxw, a very special place in my heart, as I actually lived here for 3 years and went to school, and they were so welcoming. Our dear close relatives are they're very close to our Squamish Nation. We're very close in relation. So I'll say a shout out our Snuneymuxw for hosting us. Osiam, thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Blake Mansbridge. I live in Vancouver, but I was actually born and raised in Nanaimo, so very appreciative of the opportunity to be here today and always happy to come back to Nanaimo. I'm our Senior Manager of External Relations at FortisBC. At FortisBC, we're guided by our statement of Indigenous principles. We developed that over 25 years ago in collaboration with Indigenous leaders throughout the province. And we're taking a similar approach currently with the development of our reconciliation strategy, which we intend to publish later this year. My work at Fortis is focused on our Eagle Mountain to Woodfibre gas pipeline project. So we're constructing the infrastructure that will ultimately deliver gas to the Woodfibre LNG facility. And I'm focused on our external relations, so work in close collaboration with Woodfibre and Squamish Nation, as well as other nations on the project that we'll touch on later in this discussion. So thanks very much for the opportunity to be here today. Look forward to this panel and engaging conversations as the conference goes on.
Thank you, Blake.
Hatsqual Tanoyap, Selena Basi Quiensna. Wonderful to see everyone today, and thank you very much to the organizers and our moderator for putting together this discussion. My role at Woodfibre LNG is Vice President of Corporate Relations. What does that really mean? It means I get to do all of the incredible work building relationships with all of our Indigenous partners, which include the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam. Shout out to Jay, who's here from Musqueam. When we thought about what is the title for this, I thought really wanted to showcase our youth and bring these two youth that have been involved in the project for over 4 years now, and introduce them to the panel life. So really pleased to have Nolan and Seraphine here with us today. And also wanted to acknowledge the Sinemote people. Thank you very much for hosting this conference. Really excited about the conversation. Again, happy to share about Woodfibre LNG's journey. We know that LNG is a very hot topic right now. It's something that Canada wants to develop more of and something that the world frankly needs more of. So for so many of my colleagues in this room, people that have touched the project in various ways over the years, now's our time, and we all know how hard it's been, and we've got lots of lessons from the journey that Woodfibre has been on. I've been with the project for almost 5 years, so it's been a real amazing journey, and I had the opportunity to develop relationships and some programming that we think is going to make a meaningful impact, not only for the nations that we work with, but in the Indigenous natural resources kind of going forward. So thank you again, looking forward to the discussion.
Eoch Tanab, Yawan, Hotman Squallow, and a question no way, it a squall T-suits. Hot squall to know, Nolan Queen Sna, Tanachin Tla, CHMO Humel, West Chimwa Mo, not qua Humalterson Humel T-suits, Chinkoman Tomi to Sananoch, Elchtan Squetos, Tomat Quetis Homish Nachum. Hope you guys got all of that. My English name is Nolan Rudkowsky. My ancestral name is Katsalanoch Tinanoch. I'm the Indigenous Relations Coordinator with Woodfibre LNG. I've been involved with the project for 3 years now, so I've got to see quite a bit of a change and see the adjustments that I've had to come with it. But I'm thankful to be here today. I'm a rookie on the panel along with Seraphine, so take it easy on us, huh?
Thank you, Nolan. If you want to learn more about our panelists, please visit the website, and their full bios are there. So to open, Selena, I'm going to come to you first. From Woodfibre's LNG's perspective, what has the relationship with Squamish Nation taught you about how major energy projects should be developed? And how has that relationship and the Squamish Nation Environmental Assessment Agreement specifically changed the way this project is actually being delivered?
Thank you. It's a really great question. I think our relationship with the Squamish Nation is the underpinning of everything we do on this project, every decision we take, and every action that is implemented. And I don't say that lightly. Our project is owned by an international Singapore-based business, and they understand the value of really operating that way. So I really can say, I think for both the Fortis pipeline and for the LNG facility that is Woodfibre, that is the center of what we do. In terms of what that means, it's really important to note that the nation is and made a decision to be a regulator first. So they put us through the first of its kind Indigenous-led environmental assessment process in parallel with the BCEAO, and that really allowed them to make sure that their values were embedded in the project from the very start. It wasn't until those values, those environmental, social, and cultural values were established and codified in the Squamish Nation Environmental Assessment Agreement that we began to discuss the economic package known as an Impact Benefit Agreement. So I think just the way that the nation uniquely approached this has set us up for success. And yes, it's taken a lot more time in some regards, and there's been challenging conversations when there's differing opinions, but it got us to a place now where, we went slow to now go faster, and the end is now in sight. So I'll speak about a few tangible things when you say, how has it impacted change on the project? I've got 3 examples for you. The first is that there was actual real changes made at the design phase. So the nation's values and the nation's review are what drove the project to choose electric drive. So Woodfibre LNG will be the first electric drive LNG to market from Canada, and that is a direct reflection of the nation's values and priorities on the environment. If they were going to get involved in LNG, it had better be the world's cleanest, lowest emissions LNG. We also made a real change in how we were going to be doing the cooling of the LNG. So at one point, the model was seawater cooling. We changed that to air cooling, which of course has a lower environmental impact. And I want to note that this was taking place not today, not in sort of when net zero has been a long-standing established discussion. This was taking place in 2014, so kind of really interesting to reflect on that journey as well. The second piece that I think is important to talk about is the nation's role as a regulator. So in terms of the environmental management plans that govern the project, everything from wildlife management to marine mammal management to social and cultural management to housing, those are approved by the Squamish Nation, and they are not rubber stamp approvals. These are rigorous reviews. They are also approved and reviewed by the Environmental Assessment Office, but I think having the nation in that role has made real and direct tangible changes so that we're going beyond what is just basically required in the regulatory regime, and that's allowed us to build trust and allowed the nation to actually see themselves and their values reflected in the project. And then the third thing, I think, is again, not just looking at, okay, this is what the regulation requires us to do, or this is what our IBA requires us to do, but to be constantly listening, evolving, and responding to what the nation is telling us about their concerns and their values. And 2 things that I'm really proud of that we've done in that regard is the flotel. And I have to stand here and talk about the flotel, I suppose I'm sitting, because so many people in this room were involved in getting our flotel #1 to site. It was a decision that we undertook to house all of our workers on a basically refurbished cruise ship, because the nation said, we don't really want this temporary transient workforce in our community. We do have real concerns about the impact on the safety of our women and girls, and we do have real impacts on the service impact that it's going to have in our community. Instead of pushing back, we listened and we responded with a $100 million investment that is the flotel, put that through the regulatory system, and now we have 2 of them at site. The second piece that I'm really proud of, and that these 2 young people with me are a part of, is the fact that every single worker on our project, whether you're the top senior engineer from McDermott International, our Houston-based EPC, or you're a local craft construction worker, you go through an in-person 2-hour gender and cultural safety training, and these 2 are involved in that training. So for 2 hours, they've got captive audience of people from, traditionally male-dominated industry learning about the impacts that major projects have had and how to really go forward and action the findings of the National Inquiry on Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women and Girls. And I think that is really spectacular, and it's gone, again, a long way with showing the nation at the council level and the community level that we hear, listen, and respect their values.
Thank you, Selena. I want to stay on this topic and push a little deeper, because I think that from the process side, the agreements, the assessment, and the conditions that part is what really gets written up and most people can have access to. But there's another layer underneath this, and this is where really the Indigenous voices come in. And so I'm going to go to Seraphine and Nolan. I'll come to both of you on this one. Beyond the process of the paperwork, what has this relationship actually changed? Not just in how the project is run day to day, but in how Woodfibre LNG understands its responsibilities to the land, to the water, and to the future generations. I'm interested in what's shifted that wouldn't show up in a document.
I would say what's shifted the most is the trust within the business and the nation and council. they're really supportive of the project with the good work that's gone on so far, thus being 3 years pre-construction, construction, and now we're finally trying to get to operations. Without the support and the trust and the partnership, there wouldn't be transparency to have the tough conversations that need to be held. And obviously it's oil and gas, civil construction. Indigenous voices were held out of these projects for too long. That's not the case anymore. We're taking back control of the projects in our territory.
And going back onto the idea of like trust, you know, I knew so many people from my community who were against this project, including lots of my family. But it was also a place where we didn't know. We didn't know what was going to happen. And now that we are, you know, involved in it, in every step of the project and planning and execution, so many of our nation now knows what's going on a day-to-day basis. It gets rid of a lot of that fear that our people had. And, you know, I have so many family that actually who were opposed that now work on the project. You know, once we have that base of trust and relationship, it's opened the doors for people who, you know, would have never thought they'd be working with Woodfibre LNG. It's created this really strong relationship. And something I wanted to say was that before working on this project, I mean, I've been involved for 4 or 5 years now, is that our nation has treated this relationship very seriously, but Woodfibre has also, you know, maintained that relationship, has done the work, and is very serious in their commitment to our relationship together. And I think people in our nation really see that. They see, you know, Selena and other people out in our communities as well, and like building those first-time relationships.
Thank you. And actually, I'm going to come back to Nolan really quick because you had mentioned something when we were chatting earlier that you were the first employee, Indigenous employee on the project. And, you know, from your perspective, when you started as the first, you know, number one, to today, you'd mentioned that there was at one time almost 67 different Indigenous workers on this project. You know, what do you see today different than the day you started?
There's Squamish people on site, making sure the environmental monitoring is getting done, making sure the busy bee girls are cleaning on site. Me and Seraphine are helping run and facilitate orientation. So there are more Squamish folks that are coming to site, which wouldn't have been the case over 80 years ago at the original pulp mill. If you were Squamish, you probably would have never gotten a job there. And that's not the case anymore. We're taking back control and having a voice in these conversations. So I think it's important. I definitely think after I joined, more people followed. So I'm happy that this worked out so far.
Thanks, Nolan. And it's great to see two young leaders from a community that's affected to be a big part in leading this project. Well, this is a good time and a good place to widen the lens a little bit because a project like this doesn't exist on its own. It depends on the infrastructure that feeds it, and that infrastructure has its own relationship and relationships to build. Blake, I'm going to turn to you now. As I understand it, FortisBC is building a roughly 50-kilometer natural gas pipeline to deliver gas to the Woodfibre LNG facility. A linear project like that crosses a lot of ground and a lot of territory. So from your perspective, how has FortisBC advanced this project in collaboration with First Nations? And what has that collaboration look like in practice?
Thanks, Jeremy. Yeah, so we are building a 50-kilometer natural gas pipeline to deliver gas to Woodfibre LNG, and it spans the traditional territories of the Squamish Nation, the Tsleil-Waututh Nation, the Musqueam Indian Band, and the Coquitlam First Nation. And I'll start by just telling a short personal story. A large portion of our pipeline is being constructed in an area referred to as the Indian River Watershed. My first experience in the Indian River Watershed was about 4 years ago. And I remember getting out of a truck and standing on the bridge over the Indian River, and looking up, you see all these eagles flying. You look down, you see salmon spawning, and it's an incredible place. It was peaceful, it was quiet, and that really stuck with me because that was the time that I really understood the responsibility that we carry when constructing this project, and why that area and all of the lands in which we're constructing the project are so important to our nation partners. We have an approach that's shared amongst our leadership at FortisBC on this project, which is it's not what we're building, but how we're building it. Similar to Woodfibre LNG, Squamish Nation did its own environmental assessment of our project. And one of the conditions that Squamish Nation placed on the project was to have no surface impacts to the Squamish estuary. And that actually led to us redesigning that portion of our project to the point where originally it was going to be conventional open-cut construction through the estuary, and we transitioned that to a tunnel, a 9-kilometer long tunnel, which I understand will be the longest tunnel that houses natural gas infrastructure in North America. Prior to constructing that tunnel, we had an opportunity to learn from a Squamish Nation educator on the importance of the estuary to the Squamish Nation people. All of our tunnel workforce had that opportunity, and it was at the estuary, it was in person. And in my opinion, that was a very pivotal time for all of our workers to really understand and respect the land. That portion of the project, the tunnel, is completed now beneath the estuary, and in total, the entire tunnel between Squamish and the Woodfibre LNG facility is approximately 85% complete. And I really attribute a lot of that success to that initial conversation and the respect that everybody gained from hearing about the importance of the land firsthand. And I'll just finish with a final point on the importance of relationships. Our project will be completed. There'll be an end to the construction. But there won't be an end to these relationships and friendships that we've developed throughout the project. These relationships are foundational to the project, and at Fortis, as a energy delivery company, as a critical service provider, we're not going anywhere, and we will continue to operate this infrastructure. And it's these relationships that will continue to be there, that we will continue to sustain and build on as we continue to operate this infrastructure in Squamish, as well as throughout the province.
Thank you, Blake. Some great stories. Just before we get into a couple questions, you touched on the cultural training and the awareness that went into your project. I'm going to come back to Seraphine because I think one thing you didn't touch on was what you're actually doing with every employee and every contractor that comes through the facility.
Thank you. I totally forgot to say, my job on the project, I do a lot of public speaking for my nation. I'm a cultural ambassador. I do many different things, but one of my main jobs is to actually go on site, and every person that comes and works on the project has to sit through our training. So first you do a cultural introduction, so it's about an hour of kind of like just an introduction to Squamish history and culture and the land, and how our people have been impacted by projects like the old pulp mill, and why people need to benefit from these projects. And then that one's very informational and uplifting and very educational. And then we go into the gender safety training, which is what I've been doing a lot lately. And it's definitely a little bit more heavy. For a lot of people, it's very shocking. If you've never heard any of these stories that we have of our missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, our biggest concern as a nation was the influx of thousands of people that we don't know coming into our community. We've heard horror stories all over North America, and this was our biggest concern. And we just wanted to do this in person, to have a conversation, to sit down face to face with these people that might not know our history, that might not know these stories. And we get people from all over the world that come to these sessions, and we might be the first Indigenous people they'll ever meet. So it's pretty intense, and you'd think it'd be a tough crowd. They're all like construction guys, and sometimes it is, but we have a lot of good conversation, and I say it's always like it's just one step in the right direction, and just wanting to have that in-person conversation.
Excellent, thank you. So I'm gonna turn over here to Slido and take a question. And it seems like all of our questions are directed towards Nolan and Seraphine. So I'm gonna start there. Nolan and Seraphine, acknowledging the amazing progress so far, what supports are still needed to bring Indigenous voices more fully into the industry?
I would say just improving on the template and the model that we've used so far as the partnership with the nation. If we want to continue on with our generation to carry forward with the negotiations and the projects that previous generations have ultimately spoken for, it's important for young people to step up now and include themselves and believe in themselves ultimately that they belong in these conversations, in these rooms, right? That's true reconciliation in my mind.
Thank you. I'm actually, this question I love because I am a father of 3 children, and I'm not a Kikwa, which is grandpa in my language, but someone that I know it's going to be happening soon is, what would you say to a young Indigenous person watching this sector and wondering whether there's a place for them in it?
I'll say that if you told me I'd be sitting up on a panel like 5-10 years ago, I would not believe you. This was always, I thought, my mom's role. Like, she's a chief of council for my nation, and one of the biggest spokespeople for my nation. And I thought, oh, that was her thing. And then here I am, kind of getting trained, I guess, whether I knew it or not, to follow in her footsteps. I think just for young Indigenous people like me who maybe would never think they'd be up here doing this kind of thing, I just say, like, if I can do it, you can do it, and also look for mentors, look for other, just people. I wouldn't be up here if I didn't have that mentor in my mom to train me. I wouldn't have ever believed that I could do this kind of thing or had the tools to do this. I think a mentor is really, really beneficial.
Maybe can I just jump in with one? I know I'm not the hot billing anymore with these two, but I think what I would say to a young Indigenous person, Nolan and I met for the first time at Cactus Club for lunch. Seraphine and I have, spent so much time together. So what I would say to a young Indigenous person is, don't be afraid to ask people on the project like Blake or myself or whatever industry you're in. I think there's so many people willing to mentor and give back, and there are no stupid questions. I think it's imperative. Indigenous youth are the fastest growing demographic in our country. Encourage just making those connections and getting involved and sitting down and learning to just talk about business and industry and start there.
Thank you. That's awesome, and I would just like to add to that for our cousins and our brothers and sisters from First Nations that are joining us. If you have youth in your community that are good at math or really enjoy certain more STEM type education opportunities, we are definitely lacking when it comes to engineers and those types of careers where typically First Nation youth aren't going into those careers. And they're not being directed into those careers, and there is great opportunity there, and there's companies begging for those types of technical roles, and as especially LNG and the natural gas industry grows in BC, and with what's on the horizon, potentially there's great opportunities out there for Indigenous youth to get into these types of roles. So we got 30 seconds left. We got time for one more question, and I'm going to pick this one here. Electrified LNG primarily focuses on Scope 1 rather than the life cycle emissions. Would future Woodfibre LNG expansions be more economic with gas compression? And that maybe could be for Selena or Blake coming from the gas world.
It's not something that we have modeled extensively, so I can't really speak to that. Rather, I think I could say that, any type of Scope 2 or Scope 3, we are definitely looking at as an industry as to methods and tools to reduce that. So I think that gas compression is something that is sort of a sector-wide conversation to be had. And with so many government representatives in the room, I think now is the time for us to be having those sector-wide conversations. We don't have an LNG sector association anymore. So I do think now is the time for us to be looking at these very strong analysis points and figuring out what are the best practices that are going to continue to develop this industry to be best in class in the world, frankly. We have the resources, we have the talent, and I think now's the time for that collaboration.
Well, thank you. That's going to use up all our time today. So I want to thank all of you for this enlightening discussion. Special thanks to Nolan and Seraphine for being rookies on a panel, and you guys did a great job. And thanks everybody, and Limlet.